I'm live. Hello, 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 hello. I could tell you about any of my books, Fun Monster, if you like, but you'd have to tell me which one you'd want me to talk about. I've written three, and I love this line about books, though it's not exactly true. I still love it. I love lots of lines like that that are not exactly true. Books are for writing, not for reading. Um, uh, I love that line. It's Quentin Crisp. Um, Yes, so I'm happy to talk about any of these books. I'm currently not writing any books. I have one in a drawer that I think I could still get out. It's a dialogue. It's basically me and you, or me and me taking a walk and talking about the whole big picture. Um, uh, it- it's it's two voices. One guy is me, and the other is a guy who is challenging the shit out of me. And just just nonstop questioning, doubting everything I'm saying. And by the end of the book, he's not convinced. But anyway, dialogue is a great way to work. It's so easy compared to regular writing. I've written three. Paula, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because you mentioned it. The first one I wrote probably 12 times. Um, it was the first book I tried. Books are ungainly things. Articles are easier. I have a brother who's an English professor, and at one point he said, you're just starting out writing, maybe try to write articles instead. And it was a great solution. And I ended up writing 1,100 articles for Psychology Today as a blog. They're bite-sized. You can deal with them. A book is much more ungainly. And these days, not the medium I'm going with, because YouTube is better and it's also more bite size. I did coin a term this morning, AI adornography. It's self-adorning, AI-generated intellectual cosmic grand theory porn flooding social media, making the gullible feel like geniuses for generating prompts and getting views from people who feel like geniuses watching it. So this is a new phenomenon. I'm dealing with a fair amount of it because because I have a bunch of friends who are in this game. And it relates to what I want to focus on here, which is how do you shop among interpretations? And remember that this is a marketplace. We're not just playing with Jeremy's ideas here. I have lots of vehicles for getting my ideas explored. I kick the tires on them. I had a big one this week, and my luxury is that this morning I'm confused by this idea. I'm working on it. I'm trying to figure it out. But go out and take a walk with Terry. He's my main debating, thinking partner. We don't debate much. We mostly explore because we're so much on the same page by now. But I was able to kick the tires on this idea with him this morning. We didn't complete it. There is. I'm not. I'm not especially interested in completing them. I'm interested in the process of doing that. Books are for writing, not for reading. But anyway, no, I have three books out. The first one was just me putting that 12 times written book to bed. It was I had already spent just years on this damn thing, including roughly a half a year just writing a proposal for it for an agent who then went out and pitched it and wasn't able to sell it. And so I finally self-published it. It's called Negotiate with Yourself and Win. Um, uh, uh, let's see, negotiating, mind-minding skills for people who can hear themselves think. The second was the book I wrote for Columbia University Press. That was big fun, which is a distillation of the work I'd been doing with Terry. It was basically Terry Deacon for Dummies, and Columbia picked it up because Terry's ideas were important enough in the intellectual world and also very hard for people to understand because Terry writes, as one Harvard professor said, he writes like a truck. He's famously difficult to read because his prose is very muscular. There's nothing conversational about it. It's extremely technical. He's kind of a nerdy guy. So and we have written very little together, which which is fascinating. He writes articles with other people, partly because I don't write that much academically anymore. I'm much more interested in making these ideas accessible. But partly because we have radically different writing styles. So we wrote a few articles together early on, and then since then we've been engaged in this kind of parallel publishing. And I adore his writing, but it's not my style. The third one is the one that you might know, which is What's Up with Assholes. Oh, the second one was called Neither Ghost Nor Machine. Good morning, Shirley. Nice to see you. Even though I don't see you. I wish I saw you, but it's fine. We can just talk. It's ideas. So the second one was called Neither Ghost Nor Machine, The Emergence and Nature of Selves. So, and Terry and I love that title because it corners me. I don't get to use the assumption that we're just machines. And I don't get to simply imply that there's some ghost in the machine, some spirit or something. I have to explain spirit. I have to explain soul. I have to explain selves. Okay, so, and then the third book, of course, is What's Up with Assholes, How to Spot and Stop Them Without Becoming One. So there, I've told you about my books. Now, here's the next step here, which is that Fun Monster, you or anyone can tell me what you would write a book about, if you could write one, and you can these days because AI will write it for you. No, I've been flooded by this AI adornography lately. There's been a lot of it. Friends and colleagues who are generating this stuff. You prompt a computer and it does all this very typical AI B-roll, and it gives you a British voice that sounds deep and profound. So we're seeing an amplification of something that has been there in academics for a long time, which is the grand theory. You come to some grand conclusion about how reality works. And in a way, I'm engaged in that same process too. Not necessarily the AI, but I'm trying to come up with a more accurate or realistic framing for what we actually are, what the actual fuck we are. So is my stuff the same? That's the interesting question. Is my method different? I think it is, but not everybody would notice the difference. For example, last night I was at an academic presentation with Terry by a friend who thinks he's doing the same thing that Terry is, but I don't think so. What then is the difference? How do you shop among those ideas? Jeff, you're late. I'm sending you to the principal's office to get a tardy slip. Jeff, where's your dedication? What happened? Did your dog eat your ride to school? Sorry. There. Okay, set you straight. Let's see. So what I'm saying, Jeff, it'll affect your grade. And I know you're just right on the edge of graduating. So yeah, look to it. Let's see. Okay, so what I want to do here is play with your ideas. If you've got any, shame monster. There we go. That's good. That's right. I am into the idea that, so I want to hear your ideas. Put them out there. Let's hear them. Let's kick the tires on your ideas, and kick the tires on mine. That's the fun we're having. This is the fun you get to have as if you play in philosophy. Not just saying that not all philosophy goes like this. A lot of it is this AI adornography. But what I love about playing in philosophy is that we love each other and we disagree, and it's fine. It's this line from Hume, the philosopher. Truth emerges from disagreements among friends. I love that. I mean, there are all sorts of people who I disagree with, who I positively adore, including a guy I hung out with last night. I dropped by his place to to visit. They had a kind of open house Halloween thing, and this is a guy who just got 1.5 million views off of one of those AI adornography videos. And we disagree lots. Tomorrow I'm going off to have a conversation with someone who he's 87. I really appreciate what he's done in politics. In Hillary Clinton's biography, she quotes this guy and says that he came up with a solution, a political approach to climate change that I was going to adopt. There's a picture of Bill Clinton holding my friend's book, reading it, just coming off of a plane with it in his hand. And she says, I regret that I didn't run on it. So I think he's actually brilliant that way. But he also plays in this world of grand cosmology. We totally disagree. He just put out a full color book, which is the equivalent of this kind of AI or adornography. It's full of cosmic images and all this sort of stuff. A lot of rhetoric around his grand theory. No, I totally disagree with it. But we adore each other. So I'm going to go out and visit him in Point Reyes tomorrow. We're going to get stoned. He's an old stoner, intellectual kind of guy. And then we're going to go out to a restaurant in Point Reyes where they serve popovers, free popovers. I love popovers. I don't eat them much. That's what I was saying. I still think there is more to explore about how to influence people who voted for Trump, but now are hungry because they will not get SNAP. Me too. Me too. I put out a video, small attendance yesterday, but on this subject. I think of you, Fun Monster, whenever I'm thinking I'm late on putting out an article, another video in the let's see, in how to not suck at fighting. So I wanted I want to be doing more there. I'm chronically unsatisfied with our solutions for talking to Trumpists, and that's what I wanted to talk to Terry about this morning. I'm working on a new approach to thinking about what's going on with them that has to do with the liar's paradox and metastasis. I'll get to that probably. I just want to make sure to be addressing these things. Yes, I know the way to Bolinas, even though they keep on taking down the sign. So I do know because I've been there lots. I live in this glorious part of the world where the temperature is usually mild, and the nature is just stunning. For a long time, I was not appreciating it much. I'm an indoorsy guy. I hang out at home. I get up in the morning, I work on my computer all day, and then I'll take the occasional walk. And only recently I've started to take this long back route into Muir Woods. So you arrive at Muir Woods in the evening when there's hardly anybody there, and you arrive the backside. You don't have to deal with the parking and the gate and all of that. And there you are at dusk with these giant redwoods. So that's been lots of fun as an evening activity. I'm going to try to squeeze in one of those walks tomorrow. Okay, I'm 73 and would write a book called Life's a Trip I Didn't Buy a Ticket For. Well, that's interesting. I like that. I do like that. You didn't buy a ticket for it. Someone imposed it on you. And I've been dealing this week with some parents who have sons for blaming them sons who blame them for bringing them into this world. But and it's wild. I mean, the moment of birth is the inevitability of death. So yeah, it is a funny ride that way. You didn't buy a ticket for it. You could leave anytime by suicide. I don't recommend it. That's not what I'm doing here. But people don't, and this is something that existential philosophers think a lot about. It's almost like, well, why don't you just kill yourself? You're a self. That's why, because selves don't like their own deaths or the death of what they believe in. Which comes back to Fun Monster's point about it, which is people who voted for Trump but are now hungry and therefore dealing with this trade-off because they're addicted to food. All organisms are, but they're also addicted to Trump. So that's just fascinating. I'm going to get to my idea about what they're actually addicted to, because it's not. I mean, Trump is a fine uh, ritual artifact for their addiction, but I want to understand the essence of that addiction, because it's the same addiction that you had if you were a Nazi or if you were a Stalinist. It's not about left or right. It's just an addiction to feeling right. It's an addiction to what I think of today as a kind of rectifier. So the way this images first came to me is when people say, well, when you're in a hole, stop digging. Well, why do people not stop digging? Because they can always flip the world upside down and claim that the more they dig, the more they're climbing. So I think there's some of that going on. There are great succulent gardens in Bolinas. There are all over this area. We've got that, especially when you get down to places like Monterey, you get some serious succulents. But yeah, there we go. Okay, Shirley, the title of my book is Walking into Sin. Good, you fill that out for us, if you like, Shirley. That's yes. And in a way, I'm interested in falling backwards into sin, or falling up into sin, because sin is really delicious. Um, uh, and I want to keep that in mind. I don't want to forget that being an asshole is actually just delicious if you can get away with it. It's so satisfying. No, which is why it's so hard to talk to them, hard to get through to them, because they are self-rectifying. What do I mean by that? So idea I'm still playing with. So a rectifier is someone who maintains their pride by flipping things over, and they do it through something like the liar's paradox. But I haven't worked out the details of this yet. I've got some ideas on it, but it's basically it's basically what you get, the easier life you get once you declare holy war, once you decide that you will take no more guff from anybody. It's a kind of oh hell no kind of a state of mind, where you say, from now on, anyone who disagrees with me is my enemy. I don't need to hear from them. So or more, the fact that they disagree with me proves I'm right. And you get this kind of rectifying even in Jesus Christ, who is the King of Kings. Um, he always wins, except when he doesn't win, you flip it over, and it proves he will win in the end. This actually precedes Jesus. It's something you start to hear in the Old Testament. But so and it's exactly what Trump does. So he's always right, and when he's wrong, it's because the game is rigged, and he doesn't have to listen to it. So I'm trying to work out how you actually do that. What's involved? This isn't. Most of my ideas are reruns. I just keep on trying to visit old topics, um, the same questions, but try to deepen my understanding of them. It's more like I'm driven by questions. I don't have as many conclusions as sell in this world. If you want to make people feel like a genius, you tell them the answer, and I do less of that. That I think, or at least I have doubts about. The questions keep on coming. That's also been a topic this week. Terry and I were talking about this. This is the satisfactions of feeling completeness, and how you get. We got to this by the end of last Saturday's session. How to get to a place where you're confident in your lack of confidence, where you're at ease with not having a final answer. I mean, yeah, it came up in part because, as I've mentioned before, I just lucked into some incredible mentors who were kind of big deals in one arena or another, and didn't stop doubting themselves. They actually wanted their time back from their fame so they could ask next questions. Dan Ellsberg was a classic example of this. The guy at 92 weeks from death asking questions. just trying to figure it out. Still trying to figure it out. When I was with him on one of the last days, he said, "What's the name of that book? I want to write it down. I'm going to order it. I'm not sure I'm going to be alive to read it." Um, one of the last questions he asked me was, "What is wisdom?" And he wasn't asking because um, he saw me as an authority. He asked me because we dealt with questions all the time. And he would go into these tunnel vision monologue reveries. He was famous for the Pentagon Papers, and before that for basically being the pioneer in the field of behavioral economics. They consider him the founding father of that field of research. Um, but and Pentagon Papers made him super famous. Um, uh, Wisdom is the best use of knowledge. I'm gonna go at that two ways, but first to Shirley. Sin can also be translated as knowledge. Okay. So yeah, I had some interesting conversations this week about knowledge. Um, let me tease out something that's interesting to me about wisdom and knowledge. So I find a lot in the Serenity Prayer, and I find a lot in the intellectual father of it, Reinhold Niebuhr, who was an American clergyman. See, I can deal with clergy, um, who was also very interested in irony and paradoxes, like I am. He came up with the Serenity Prayer, and it's got that weird thing at the end of it, wisdom to know the differences. Well, which is it, wisdom or knowledge? What is the relationship between wisdom and knowledge? Um, Strictly speaking, I don't believe in knowledge. I'm a fallibilist, and this is why I came up this week. Is that someone got very intrigued by this assumption, this grounding assumption I have that my bets are ungrounded, that I can know something that turns out to be wrong. That no matter how confident I am in a bet, I remain still more confident that it is a bet. It's funny. I keep on looking as if I'm talking to you over here, uh, even though this is where I should look. No, it's a kind of there's a weird. I love intimacy of a certain kind. I mean, I'm careful about it by my age, um, but I'm not as horny for intimacy, but I do love connecting. And so that's why I think I keep on looking down there. Anyway, so wisdom to know, what the fuck? What is that? Wisdom to know. Is it knowledge? Is it so to me, wisdom, the way I resolve that for now is that wisdom is a word that is like the word being. Um, Being is both a noun and a verb. And so um, you are busy being a being. That's what it is to be alive. It's ongoing work. It, you wouldn't talk about a table as a being because it's not actually in the business of being. It's not doing the verb part of it. It's not doing any work to keep itself together in the same way that you are. You have to keep on regenerating yourself every minute. And to get a sense of what that's like, just imagine how fast a body decays when it dies. You're doing the reverse of that all the time. You're keeping your shit together. So there's that. And wisdom is a similar word. To me, wisdom is the good guesses you've accumulated through trial and error, the wisdom to know something, but it's also the prayer itself. And I don't mean a prayer to God, I mean the quest for better wisdom. So what I'm promoting here is wisdoming. Um, uh, yeah, you are becoming who you are becoming, but you are also be, becoming who you are. Uh, in biology, we talk about the red queen from Alice Through the Looking Glass. The red queen has to run in order to stay in place. And it shows up primarily in thinking about the evolution of sex. Uh, the red queen hypothesis in evolutionary biology is that uh, bacteria or viruses or parasites or any of those kinds of antigens, the things that will reduce your No, antigens. No, the living beings that could eat you alive um, are generally fast reproducing, primarily by cloning. And so the question is, why would sex ever evolve? There are two costs to sex. One is you only get to pass on half of who you are. Um, so it's not as biologically reproductively successful as cloning. Um, and there's I forget what the second cost is, but it's something like you have to find a mate or something. Anyway, the idea is a red queen. If you're going to keep up, if you're going to be able to out adapt the parasites, bacteria, viruses, all this sort of stuff, you have to shuffle the deck more. But from my perspective, you have to shuffle the deck more, and that's what sexual recombination does. Okay, it enables you to create more variety in your offspring. There are certain certain species that are facultatively sexual. That is, they mostly clone, but if when the going gets tough, they become sexual. They get jiggy because that way they can get more variety. So I'll keep doing the same thing I'm doing, but if it's not working because I'm in a stressful situation, I'll vary myself more. So that's where the Red Queen hypothesis is generally talked about in this transition into sex, into sexual reproduction. But we see it, Terry and I see it, as running through all of life. So surely you're not just becoming who you're becoming. There is that. And one way to think about it is not the spiritual growth and transformation version of it, but you are anticipating, you're regenerating yourself today so that you can be here tomorrow, so that you can become tomorrow. So there's that version of it as well. Wisdom. Just want to come back to that. So how you talk about sin and wisdom is interesting. Let me see if I can find that quote again from you. Let's see. Walking into sin. Sin can also be translated as knowledge. Well, okay, that's interesting to me. The original sin has been very much on my mind in recent weeks. The original sin of eating from the tree of knowledge. Um, uh, in the end was the beginning of the word. In the beginning of the universe wasn't the word. In the beginning of life wasn't the word. Words come much later. You could say the beginning and of the end was the word. And what happens with words? Well, you get thrown out of paradise. What is paradise? You're walled in. You're walled. Remember, I looked up the origins of the term paradise, and it means walled around. And you're cast out of that wall. And there's the last word, paradox, which is that words make us crave less words that further words make impossible. There's no wall you cannot breach with words. So that's kind of fundamental to my work, which is also why I think of this all as a fruitful exercise in futility. I'll never get the last word on what, for example, distinguishes an asshole, but I find it fruitful to be wondering about that. Okay. All right. So I want to catch a couple of things. Wisdom is the best use of knowledge to get more wisdom. I'll say this too. I don't like the word intellectual that much, but I have come to a place where I get what it's about. I don't like the distinction between intellectuals and non-intellectual. Well, no, I do. Anyway, sorry. What I mean to say is, to me, an intellectual is someone who's curious, who's begun to get addicted to using every answer as a springboard to their next question. And it's not about how much you know. For example, I consider you to be intellectuals. Whether you know a lot, whether you're new to this stuff, doesn't matter. The question is whether you're curious and therefore starting to see that wisdom isn't just the wisdom to know, but also the wisdom to quest to know better. the differences that make a difference to what I should do. So for me, wisdom is always stereo. I got to watch out for too much or too little of the same behavior. Wisdom is the ability, the versatility to adjust your behavior depending on your situation. Wisdom to know the difference, for example, between things you can't change, things you can change, that sort of thing. Yeah, people who get hooked on that. Yeah, if you play that game for long enough, you'll tend to have accumulated a whole lot of different perspectives. Um, uh, it's the opposite game of what people do when they say they do their own research. What people who say they're doing their own research means is that they're reading things that affirm what they want to believe. So a Trump person studies why they're right and everybody else is wrong. Yes, adaptability. We're talking about. So yeah, my work on my PhD is technically in evolutionary epistemology, which is basically the epistemology is how do you shop among interpretations, and evolutionary is recognizing that we've been doing that since the beginning of life. That life itself is accumulating adaptations. Adaptations are knowledge. They're know-how. An organism doesn't need to have any feelings or concepts at all in order to already have wisdom. And I've mentioned this before. I guess I'll just have to get used to that because it takes a while to get these ideas heard. The serenity prayer is there at the origins of life. Let me explain why. An organism has to have the ability to take in energy to regenerate itself and keep out the energy that degenerates it. So you could say, grant me the acceptance of what I cannot change. I cannot change this energy into more of me, and so I keep it out. The courage to use the energy that I can use in order to regenerate myself. So just think of it this way. I mean, here's an example of a beaver has the ability to transform trees, but not the ability to transform weather. And so it's got fur that protects its warm-bloodedness, but it's also got teeth that has it's the courage to change trees for their own uses. So sorry, all over the place here. Let me see. So yeah, no, I just see that as fundamental. So when you talk about otherwise known as adaptability, I'm thinking about that all the way down to the origins of life and how we accumulate these kind of threshold effects where we say, if we're in this situation, we do this. If we do in that situation, we do the opposite. That's why I say wisdom is thought of in stereo. That's also why I think of life as driving a winding, dark road, populated road, so busy road. So you're in the dark, it's windy, and you have dangers on either side of it. And this would be happening across many dimensions for us. But if you just think of it in the simplest terms, and I think of it as having two backseat drivers nagging at you, one saying, watch out on my side. There's dangers over here. Err all the way on the other side. And they're saying it in opposite ways because they're looking out only at the dangers on their other side. So what generally passes for wisdom is, from my perspective, the opposite of wisdom. It's the pat, always do X kind of stuff. Always be loving, always be kind, always be tough, whatever. And that's one of the reasons why I love the Serenity Prayer. It's 2 degrees out from the always do X approach to things. 1 degree out is there's a time to do X and there's a time to do Y, like you get in that part of the Bible, the Psalms, I think. But then the Serenity Prayer starts to flesh it out. What are the kinds of circumstances in which you want to have the courage to try to change things? What are situations where you want the serenity to accept things, all that sort of stuff. And if you look up variations on the serenity prayer, the first article that comes up is one of the things I did for Psychology Today years and years ago, which is 16 variations on the serenity prayer. Is it, no, it's 14, because I was doing it as the 7 wonderings of the ancient or living world, and 7 wonderings of the human world, the languaged world. Oh my gosh. Let me see. Okay, LKJA. I don't know if I know your name, but hello. Nice to have you here. If we lived for so long without language, the self-consciousness that results from language means that modern humans are severely mentally ill and living in a non-religious fallen state. I love where you're going. I don't necessarily go where you end up. In the beginning of humans was the Word. I think we're on the same page there. And the Word was God. I think that fits perfectly once you recognize that what you get with humans is this capacity to abstract magical explanations for things. So these are unexplained explanations, and God would be that proudly, that there's no explaining God. He is the beginning of it all, and he explains anything that we are having trouble understanding. So you understand, let's say, I'm non-religious. Don't get me wrong, I'm as delusional as the next guy. I just don't get my rocks off that way. Last night I spent with 2 wonderful people who, we needed God. And I think, Jeff, you're right on there. And I don't think I've mentioned this enough, but in the beginning of the Word was anxiety. You're cast out of the protected world of the animals. And you're suddenly scared as shit. And so, we would need God at that point. So I am not religious, LKJA. And this week I did note that Jesus is an ambiguous and unrealistic role model, and that's very convenient for the religious. Been thinking also this week about purgatory. Purgatory is you're destined to get into heaven. You're on the path, and you're paying your dues, and you're on an express train to righteous and good and mighty in heaven and all that sort of stuff. But you're not there yet, but it's okay that you're not there yet. And I think and what you've got in Jesus is someone who's unattainable, and I would argue very ambiguous. I mentioned this, I think, in the last session, which was that I often ask Christians. I asked one last night. I was hanging out with my 2 renters who were both religious in a Latin American way. They don't go to church and all that, but they believe in God, and one declared himself a Catholic. I asked them whether Jesus loved everybody indiscriminately. That is, he didn't need the wisdom to know who to love and who not to love. He loved everyone. Or did Jesus love the right people? And I swear, every time I've asked this question, Christians pause, and I'm quiet. I adore that they are pausing, but it's also evidence that they haven't thought about it. They haven't thought about that question. It's a huge question. I don't think it's realistic to love everyone. I certainly don't love everyone. I think it's absurd. I can give some people the benefit of the doubt. I can give others not the benefit of the doubt. But I mean, to some degree or another, but I don't want to mince words about it. No, I hate some people. And as I've mentioned before, love is a preference. It's a very strong preference. Preferences are always relative. The more I love something, the more I hate its opposite. If I love justice, I hate injustice. So this idea that you should love everything and everyone, I just think that's a totally unrealistic and inappropriate solution that makes you end up mincing words and making a mess out of love. Do I love, if I'm fighting Nazis in World War II, do I actually love these people I'm killing? They don't think so. Um, do I just get to say that I love them while I'm killing them? Let's say I'm a Nazi killing me, whatever. I'm talking about that question of what you love. So well, I do have. I think of it as attentionomics. That's not my idea. It's we're all paying attention to the question of where we're paying attention. It's a new major issue because of social media and all of that. And the way I think of it is that there are people I really trust. There are people I am neutral about. I don't have to worry about them. There are people who I hate. There are people who I would try to kill if I had a choice, if I had a chance. Um, it's complicated. It's complicated. Anyway, let's see. As soon as we had words, we needed God. So I don't, let's see. So I'm coming back to LKJA's idea here, an idea. And thank you for pitching it. And remember that this is, I'm right here with you, my brother or sister or whoever you are. And we're kicking the tires on your idea. That's what we're doing. So this is this thing that you do where, truth emerges from disagreements among friends. And that doesn't, I don't get to claim that I've corrected you and that the disagreement resolves my way. This is just my opinion, okay? If we live for so long without language, the self-consciousness that results from language means that modern humans are severely mentally ill and living in a fallen state. Okay, it's that word non-religious there. The mental illness, from my perspective, would include anybody claiming that they know what's the right way to live. So any asshole can accuse anybody who doesn't agree with their religion or their claims about having solved reality mentally ill. I'm not going to do that. Mentally ill is an interesting issue. Um, uh, uh, but I mean, last night I was in a 3-hour meeting with a psychiatrist who was explaining his version of how the mental illnesses evolved in humans. But no, I'll kick the tires on your non-religious. Apparently, you think I get the sense that you think that either it is sane to be religious or it's sane to be your religion. And I don't get to do that. I don't get to do that about my religion. And that's my problem with religion, is it claims that it's the self-satisfaction that I also see in Trumpists. I don't know if you saw it this week. I did. I'm now doing an almost daily Trump tells it like it is. It's an AI generated Donald Trump saying what's really going on for him. And no, he assumes that anybody who's not living by his standards is mentally ill. And he's saying in one of these, no, I don't believe in God. Of course not. I believe in me and only me. But I am really grateful to the church because it groomed me. It groomed me for it groomed people for being suckers for me. I'm just playing God, and I'm offering heaven in America again. And I don't have to do anything much because these people are all primed on it. So what I ask you to do, LKJA, if you're still here and still receptive to this, is flesh out what you mean by mentally ill if they're not mentally ill and fallen if they're non-religious. And let me also offer this. I said I'm not religious, but I'm as delusional as the next guy. This is kind of straightforward. Let's see. Like you said something else here I should pick up on. Humans live before language at least 50,000 years, more like millions. But humanity doesn't mean language. Humans evolve fully without language, which only emerge. Oh, you're not religious either. I'm confused then. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm glad I looked to read what you wrote next. If this were a conversation, you'd have interrupted me by now to make clear that you're not religious either. No, I don't buy the other part of it, and not from a technical anthropological perspective. Primates lived before, hominids lived before language. Um, Language probably emerged slowly over the course of the last of the time between 2 million years ago and roughly 100 and 150,000 years ago. So that's another thing we're doing in the research group with Terry these days, is trying to get a better sense of how we ended up with what's called symbolic competence, where you have a community that maintains a bunch of arbitrary symbols, words, that don't look like the thing they represent, and they don't point directly to them the way that smoke points to fire. So they're neither iconic or indexical, they're symbolic is what we call them. And you end up with this whole vocabulary of them and concepts. So so I would challenge some of what you just said about humans in two respects. One is your timeline, and the other is this thing, humans evolve fully without language. I don't buy it. No. I mean, not what, from my perspective, no. From my perspective, what makes us distinctly human as compared to hominid, I'm not disparaging hominids. I'm not saying they were machines. I'm not saying that they were stupid. They had all sorts of, as Fun Monster says, adaptability. They had all sorts of great habits, or else they wouldn't have lasted as long. You know, Homo erectus lasts 2 million years with one tool. Very impressive. That kind of stability. We don't have anything like that. We're in a much more precarious state than that, because we keep on coming up with new tools and new problems from them, and we're racing to get them. Okay. Um, uh, and what radically makes us human, from my perspective, is the language. So please, LKJA, help me see, flesh that out. We're kicking the tires on an idea, and it's not so much that, I mean, we have assumptions, but what I'm proposing here is that we're not letting, it's not a vanity move. We're not saying, because I have these ideas, I can't let go of them. That would have to be true for me too. Fair is fair. Doesn't mean I'm open-minded. I'm closed and open-minded. That's one of the major, courage to change, serenity to accept things. But I'm also, I want to understand what you're saying better. And for example, I made the misinterpretation that you were religious because of what you'd said earlier. So help me out with that one, is what I'm inviting you to do. Help me understand more of what you're saying here. And once again, we do this Sunday morning meeting about how to engage with people there's no talking to. And I'm thinking at some point I might translate that and just make it available as a live conversation like this. So I'm not just reading your text, I'm actually in communication. We're all just Zooming with each other. That's the point. Okay, let's see. Thanks for that one. It really sets mom back. So we needed God. I'm wishing for that one. I'm Jeff. I don't know which that one it is. And you're already in the doghouse with me, dude, because you showed up like 10 minutes late for class. Come on. Okay, I love your concept of the coin flip. I can agree. I could be wrong as much as them. Yeah. So this is where I'm struggling. Here, try this out with I could be wrong. One of the moves I would be tempted to make with someone is to say, look, I could be wrong. And they have two possibilities out of that. One is that they'll reciprocate and they'll say, yeah, and I could be wrong too. Another is they'll say, thank you for saying that. You're right. You could be wrong and you are, motherfucker. Yeah, that's one of the big coin flips I deal with a lot, because these days I am just delighted. I am getting tons of hate mail these days off these new short videos, and that gives me more time to practice trying to figure out how to engage with people there's no talking to. So anyway, there's that. Okay, let's see what we got here. It keeps me respectful that we each get to place a bet. Yeah. Now, I just want to point to something, Rob, that relates to that. That's the question that follows from it. we each get to place bets, and that you can take that one to the extreme. So this would be where you drive in that direction to protect yourself against being a hard-headed asshole, stubborn asshole, and you take it all the way out to things like, um, that's your truth. There's no knowing anything. We're all just betting. What I call the doctrine of foregone inconclusion. As nobody knows anything, it's a kind of a mealy mouth place where you say, I'm open to everybody. Now, I'm not saying you're going there. I just have to watch out. If I'm going to err if I'm going to err on the side of open-mindedness, I have to watch out. Something fundamental I figured out in my partnership life back when I had one was that while I wanted good chemistry, a euphemism for hotness, and I wanted the flattery of it and all of those things, I also needed for sustainability to have compatibility in how we negotiate the incompatibilities. And I didn't find it much. I think I don't attribute it to the women I partnered with. I attribute it to the challenge of partnership and my mouthiness, and my weird. Can you imagine being partnered with a guy like me? I mean, the amount of fuss I do in this shopping among interpretation, and it's not just that I'm mouthy, but I actually am willing to talk about our psychological and emotional motivations. That is not comfortable at close range. Um, and I didn't find much compatibility in how we negotiated the incompatibilities. That's one of the reasons why I retired from it all. That and a loss of libido. Because I got interested in other things and because I'm older. But anyway, if you go out there and say, I could be just as wrong as you, you're hoping for compatibility in negotiating the incompatibilities so you can get to that place that is the ideal for philosophers, which is that truth emerges from disagreements among friends because you're both exploring. I got that with Terry. I've got that with the friends that matter most to me. And I have been thinking this week about a policy I have, which is once someone has decided that I'm just trying to win, I'm out. I I tap out. I'm not going to stick around at that point. For my dignity's sake, yeah, but also because of an inherent um, impotence. Once someone has come to that conclusion, they could be right, but there's nothing more for me to say that they cannot dismiss as me just trying to win. So that's what. Um, yes, Jeff, just in passing, yes, who would Jesus help? Love ultimately comes down to accommodation, helping someone. Love, compassion, empathy, kindness, niceness. To me, it's really important to operationalize those terms. That is to come up with a very clear understanding of what it means in practical terms. It means to help. I can claim I love everybody in the world. That's lip service. That's easy. But if I actually love someone, I'm going to accommodate them. That is to help them out. And maybe the help is easier sometimes than other times. Sometimes it's more sacrifice than others. But that is the question I was posing. Okay, so let's see what LKJ did give me more here. Yes, hominid life much before Homo stasis. Got it. Okay, language. Yeah, no. So here's where I disagree, LKJA. It's got to do with a thing that we do with language. So what you've got is hominid life that started 50,000 years before language. Now you're using dates from an evolutionary perspective. You're being more precise than I would allow myself. Remember, from my perspective, it's not like one day we got language, boom, suddenly we have this whole thing. We got to understand how symbols would start from non-symbols. And it's not like they just popped. Remember, I'm saying there's 2 million years ago to 150,000 years ago, there's this transitional period. It's not like we suddenly got them. So that's a difference in our approaches. And if you want, okay, then here's the next thing. So let's set that aside. So that means modern human bodies existed long before language. And then my question is, what is your point about that? And maybe you answer here. The invention of language created a new human experience that is different than the first 50,000 years of human existence. What you can do with language is you can take a symbol and start using it like it's a thing. It's called reifying. And then you can talk about it like it's a material thing that got installed. So sometime within those 50,000 years, we invented language. Okay, invented is hella vague. It's exactly what we do in this kind of abstraction. I've called it abstract parallelist engineering. APE. We come up with these models. Okay, so we got this thing. Okay, but anyway, what you say there is interesting, and we want to follow up on. We want to build on it. We want to refine it, or you do, I think, unless you are just declaring it, in which case that's fine. But that's actually in the realm of the adornography I'm talking about. It's not. I mean, there's lots of people doing those models, and they're easy to make. Anybody can make them, and they disagree about them, and they don't have to worry about being proven wrong on anything. I'm trying to keep it physical. So the next question is, what do you mean? So my body has things in common with single-cell bacteria. My body has things in common with birds and flowers and all of that, but it's also different. My body, yeah. So modern human bodies existed long. Long would be a funny word to be talking about 50,000 years here. We're talking about a New York minute in evolutionary time scales. But I want to understand where you're going with it. What would be your point then? The invention of the ancient language created a new human experience that is different from the. Yeah, okay. So I'm asking you, what's your point about that? What's your point about that 50,000 years that seems to be important to you about how we had human bodies? I want to understand that. I'm not asking rhetorically. I don't ask rhetorical questions if I can help it. I am asking curious questions. What do you draw from that you find interesting? I want to understand that. Okay. Let's see what else we got going on here. That we each get to place a bet. So yeah, okay. So Rob, I agree with that. And yet I don't want to be respectful of all people's bet placing. So I sometimes do say, with all due respect, I don't respect your idea at all. That's more fighting talk. I wouldn't do that here. But I mean, I might do it here with someone who's talking like they've solved reality, but it's not where I'm going here. But no, I have to figure out how much to respect. This came up this week. So I played a gig. Hey, Michael, good to see you. Now, Jeff, I hope you feel better now, because Michael's tardy slip is going to be much thicker than yours. Michael is what? He's like, we've been talking for an hour, and here he finally shows up to class. This is going to affect your grade, Michael. Okay. I've just given Jeff a hard time. He came in and said better late than never. And he was 10 minutes late. Okay. I mean, okay. He gets to clean the erasers. There we go. Yes. And because he came so late, because Michael came so late, you are now the class monitor, Jeff. Because it's all relative, you're doing better. I'm great on the sliding scale. Okay. Okay. Let's see where we are here. Shirley says placement of rocks would communicate to others what might be ahead or the direction headed in the desert. Beautifully put. What we're talking about that's a symbol. It's not a symbol per se. A rock is a rock, but it is interpreted as a symbol when it moves, when it becomes a way of pointing the direction. Now, it's not quite a symbol. It's also indexical. If you point, so what is an index? It's an index finger. So if I had a rock there, it becomes a kind of social convention that's learned. That's what makes it a symbol. But it's a symbol that is employing indexicality. In that way, it's a little bit more like onomatopoeia. If I say um, uh, blast, it's the word sounds. It kind of it captures an aspect of a blast. Um, uh, it- so it's this kind of interesting hybrid, and it gets way more complicated than the basic three, which are in icons, indexes, and symbols. But anyway, yes, you're onto something there. So we're looking for that kind of thing. And actually, our suspicion, Terry's way deeper into the anthropology. He taught biological anthropology at Harvard and Berkeley as a full professor. Um, he knows that stuff way better than me. Um, uh, but we have been looking at pair bonding rituals as where it might start, but it's guesswork. We're talking about over the span of some 2 million years, minus 150,000 roughly, when we know we've got something like a language, a full language. But where do symbols start? How do they start? Really interesting question. Uh, Rob, you were not late. You were right on time. You're an apple polisher is what you are. No, let's see. Too late, Mike. Mike thinks right. Let's see. Three would be tac toe. Okay, I got it. Okay. You asked what my point is. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just making this case and looking for holes in it. Inner human experiences changes once we had language because it created extreme self-consciousness. It created a lot of stuff, and self-consciousness would be a big part of it. And I have been, if you don't draw any conclusions from it, and I ask you, no, really, you might have some other conclusions you take from it. Hey, Azrael, Crowley, hello and happy Halloween to all. I'm with you there. But yeah, I've been looking for, I am poking holes in it. I am suggesting you need to think a little further about what you mean by language invented, language created, like it's this new thing that happened just in an instant. I'm assuming there's coevolution of language and the brain. Terry's book on the subject is called The Symbolic Species, the Coevolution of Language in the Brain. And as I've mentioned before, when I first read it before I met Terry, I cried, not because it's it moving. I cried because it was way more holes poked in my assumptions than I than I knew were holes in it, and it also was really hard going because it was so technical. So yeah, but I do ask: is there something you take from that? One um, one way of reframing your idea is we were living beings before we got language. Now that interests me a lot. And we were also living emotional beings before we got language. Um, there was kinds of self-awareness before language. And a simple example is proprioception. Proprioception is that uh, even insects kind of have a sense of where their body is with respect to things around them. Um, they have so so if that's what you mean, is that there was life before language? Yeah, I agree. But you seem to be making another point, which is that we were fully formed before we got language. And I don't know. Uh, let's see. Yes. So Terry talks about that too, Kyle. Uh, I'm not sure if that's the spelling of it, but yes. Yeah, because there are a bunch of things. So he's talking through the coevolution of circumstances, physiology, and brain reorganization. He did something like 10 to 20 years at Harvard working on allometry, size of things in the brain, and uh, and comes to the conclusion that no, there in term that a bigger brain made language possible, like bigger somehow makes more. It, it, that's that is not where he thinks the answer is, and that's mostly what you hear out there is that we got a bigger brain and then we got language. No, he's working out. We have all the same resources, brain resources as other organisms, but reapportioned and reconnected. And so he's working out the details on between selective pressures that would have been an advantage to stuff, and what's going on in the larynx that makes it controllable. You got this complication around eating, breathing, and talking uh, that had to be navigated by brain control. Um, it's a fussy book. Um, anyway, so yes, we were living before language. And this, by the way, sorry, I'm going to get to the rest of the comments, but I want to mention something. I am mind boggled. I mentioned this probably last week. It was a theme for me the week before, by how many people doubt that language made much of a difference, or that other animals don't have language. Um, I deal with this in real time. Lots of people say to me, "Well, how do you know a dog doesn't have language? How do you know that a monkey doesn't have language?" But I'm also dealing with this in intellectual history. When people are dealing for the first time with Darwin's insights, they're trying to figure out the difference between humans and non-humans, and they're doing it in language, and nobody fucking notices that language makes a radical difference in our ability to do the kinds of reasoning or moral thinking that we do. It changes so much about us, and yet people don't notice it. One thing I thought of this last week was that maybe people are like that, skeptical, because they think um, that if I say that language makes a huge difference, I think that I'm about to violate the PETA kind of laws, where I'm just going to assume that all other animals are machines. Um, like like if I think that humans are radically different primarily because of language, I'm gonna think it's okay to eat cows. I don't know, just trying to understand what it is about that, why we have such this blind spot around how much of a difference there is between us and other animals because of language. To me, it's kind of obvious. And yet you can read top science books from people who seem to just kind of overlook that or say it in passing as if it doesn't make a big difference. Okay, talking about tecto, your recent physical, but also made me think that when calling them out on what they are doing, you're creating a stalemate, which could be thought of as a win. Great point. Let me play with that for a minute. Stalemate counts as a win for them. When they say, "So what, you do it too," or if they say you're a liar, and then I say, "Actually, no, you are," then that's a stalemate at that point. But they will then say it's a win. And for me, it's also kind of a win. Um, but stalemates are not wins. So this is back to Fun Monster's point earlier, which is I'm still trying to find out a way to make them tolerate or at least experience losing. I've had some success with that with some of the Trumpists. Not that they came away admitting it. Well, one did, but this is very one-on-one. No, he didn't admit it, but he softened. He softened out of his grandstanding. But this other one, I simply was relentless with this guy who was just a troll, and he did walk away. That is, I had the last word with him. Um, well, Azrael Crowley, I am what they call heuristic. Heuristic means thrive on competitiveness. It's I so there's two versions of it. Competitiveness as um, my ego affirmation of winning, and the other is that I like a good fight. I like a good debate. Um, Probably because I'm safe, not because I'm courageous or anything like that. I mean, I'm doing some things these days that might be unsafe, but I don't experience them as unsafe yet. For example, that troll said to me, "Name a time and place. We're going to get together and put up our dukes." And I said, "No, you put a name a time and place. I'd love to have you on a video. You and I could have a conversation. Let's do it. You name a time. My schedule's flexible." But I don't worry. I don't lock my doors. I live in Berkeley. It's kind of safe over here. And so that's probably why I not just like fights, but also think it's my obligation. And doing this work where I'm trying to get people to not suck at fighting, I had to keep remembering most people can't afford much fighting. Y- You'll be it's so different for most folks. I mean, for example, one guy says to me this week, I make a point of never talking about politics at work, and it's kind of he's saying it with some pride that we shouldn't go there. We can't go there is my point. You can't afford it. I did have a boss once who was a Trump supporter. Um, and I was teaching at a school, and he was the president of the school, and he found out that I was a very progressive guy, uh, and he said, "I want to go to lunch with you. I want to have lunch with you." And we became good friends. But when he first said it to me, I told him about my vasectomy. I got a vasectomy here in Berkeley after my third child, and I got it from a Zionist. He happened to be a Zionist doctor who did that operation, and you do it. You do it. It's outpatient. You just come in. They give you a little local anesthesia. So I'm standing there, and he's cutting open my balls, and I start talking to him about a Thomas Friedman book I'd read about the Israel-Palestine thing. And he says to me, it's probably not a good idea for us to discuss this right now. So I told this to the president of my school. I said, I don't know. You got my balls in your hand, and we had a good friendship for a while. I ended up just furious at him. He was so smug. Um, but we had an engagement for a while, and yeah. So anyway, let's see. Let's go. Uh, oh, okay. So I've had some great experiences on psychedelics. Um, some of them darker than others, but I'll just tell you about one. The first time I took ayahuasca, I only took it twice. Um, uh, I was doing it in a yurt with a bunch of other people, and a friend of mine was the road chief for it. She ran the thing, um, and the synesthesia was intense. There was music going in the background. People would get up and perform, and it was amazing how visual the sound was. Um, and and um, and one guy got up and sang, and he was way out of tune, and people in the room started puking. It was like that. Um, Another guy got up and performed, and he was amateur at best. And he told me afterward that his question going into the ayahuasca was uh, um, whether he should become a professional musician or a psychologist. And I asked him afterwards, "So what did you find out on the drug?" And he said, "I should be a professional musician." I didn't think he should. I didn't think it was going to make him much money. It's hard to make money at that anyway. And he wasn't that good. He's a strummer with an okay voice. So those are some. But here's the thing about me and those altered states. I don't take them these days. I mean, I would if a friend invited me to, I suppose, maybe. And for a while there were these people who wanted me to be their road chief while they took them. So I did some of that. I would take it too, but we did that. Oh, I know what my best one was. It was it was in the middle of my most intense midlife crisis, and I took peyote with a Native American road chief inside of a teepee where you go in at 10 at night, and you leave the tent. You're in the tent straight through until 10 in the morning. And I don't know if there was any wisdom I could claim that I got out of it, but I started plummeting. I went really dark, and then something yanked me out of it and lifted me up. I would say that in some ways it was an emotional pivot point. It was the beginning of me moving out of that midlife crisis into the best time in my life. But here's the thing about revelations on psychedelics and by other means. I find it very interesting that the more intense something feels, the more real it seems to us. I call it feelality, the feeling of reality. And you get a lot of this from the psychonauts, the people who take these drugs. Um, is it's very much what revelation is about, is that I felt this intense thing. That is, I was biased by intense emotions that made me feel paradoxically as though I'm thoroughly unbiased, like I'm seeing the world as the reality is being revealed to me. I do not have that feeling about drugs. I think they're very interesting ways to relax internal selection. They're like dreams this way. They make things fuzzy in a way that generates new creative outcomes. But the idea of having a breakthrough on a drug, I'm not particularly interested in it. I don't think that's how it goes. And the last few times I took LSD or mushrooms or something like that, it was just me doing more of this stuff. Um, Me doing more of this in a different medium. Maybe it's because I'm older and don't need some major breakthrough. I'm not looking for a cosmic wedgie that makes me feel like I once was lost, but now I'm found. I'm not interesting to me anymore. I'm basically in that drug state all the time. I mean, not that bad, but yeah, that's just how it works for me. Okay, we're getting close here to the end because Jesus, enough, Jeremy. By the way, if you ever see the animated version, the movie Yellow Submarine, the Beatles movie, there's a character in it named Jeremy Hillary Boob, PhD. He's the nowhere man. And Ringo says to him several times in the movie, "That's enough, Jeremy." So I love that. I should pull that sliver out. That's enough, Jeremy. Because I am Jeremy Hillary Boob, PhD, or FUD, as they call it there. Okay, maybe you could think of it as okay. I always learn new words when I come here. Thank you. Yeah, and I make up some too. Uh, uh, like I did this morning with AI adornography. And for you guys who are late, I just want to mention what this is. This is self-adorning AI-generated intellectual cosmic grand theory porn flooding social media, making the gullible feel like geniuses for generating prompts and getting views from people who feel like geniuses watching it. I'm really stuck on this quote from a review of Richard Dawkins' book, The Selfish Gene. Makes every reader feel like a genius. That's what I'm talking about with the psychedelics, with revelation, with the aha moments. There's something about humans that crave an aha moment that I once was lost, but now I'm found feeling that MAGA milks the shit out of, while calling everybody else on their wokeness. They don't hate wokeness. They just hate any wokeness that's other than their incredibly woke, broke joke of a movement. It was all about revelation. So that's also been on my mind this week is sudden addiction. What happens when you get addicted to, we do it with technology. When a new technology comes around that makes things more efficient, we're all on it in really short time. Speaking back to what's his name's point here earlier, sorry, it's an acronym. Um, uh, there could have been something like a crystalline moment around language where once it takes hold, it would have a slow ramping up, but once it takes hold, it flourishes and we end up with an explosion of language. Um, Certainly happened with printing, certainly happened with internet, all of that sort of stuff. But what happens when you do a sudden addiction where it's like love at first sight, like people did about MAGA? I have been thinking about that this week. What are the consequences of it being a leap as compared to first of all, it can feel more real if it's love at first sight. The infatuations could be more intense. It's and you will forget the biases that made you addicted to it, because one of the things a breakthrough does is it breaks through you through self-awareness. You're no longer self-aware. You don't have to be self-aware because you found the truth, and now other people should be self-aware if they disagree with you. So anyway, I'm thinking about that kind of thing. I think it took hold so fast because of the conspiracy theories. Right. So what it's the conspiracy theories, notice how that works. They all motivate holy war, which is the whole world is against me. And I have to defend myself against it. That means you're not going to be introspective at that point. You're going to be, the problem is anybody but you. And you've also freed yourself into this fabulous kind of brainstorming improv where you can come up with whatever bullshit theory. And by the way, you can place your bets, and other people might even have respect for them, that the earth is flat. You're not making that bet because you actually believe it. You're making it for attention. So no, I don't have much respect for that, or at least I'll give a ration of shit to someone who is basically jerking off in public to having an outside idea that it doesn't hold water. Um, that I don't even think they believe. I don't think that people who believe the earth is flat believe that the earth is flat. I think that they're excited to get people giving them attention for their breakthrough idea. So this is the problem with breakthroughs, is that we don't pay much attention to what we're breaking through. We're breaking through into not paying attention to whatever it was we were breaking through. It's a sudden thing. And once you're addicted to it, like the crap we do when it's love at first sight, when we fall in love, the things we do that we couldn't possibly justify if we weren't still in love with them, or if we didn't stay infatuated, that's what interests me. That's one of the challenges we're up against, Fun Monster, when we're trying to figure out how to deal with these people, is we're asking them to give up something that they felt like saved them from anonymity. And once again, Fun Monster, you have real, visceral, direct experience, not only of this community, but of these feelings. And that's why I love to mine your mind. That's why I like to harvest, because you know what that's like. I know what it's like from my commune days. It wasn't as severe. It wasn't as intense. It was actually more grounded. I mean, what did I do when I joined the commune? I was engaged in nonstop physical work in the real world. In a way, it grew me in that direction. But what motivated me was the sense that I had broken through. Um, it's true. I was a putz. No, I'm asking something different. I was a putz. Oh, you say, yeah, humans can be putzes. I did come up with something this week that I want to mention as it related to closing. It's uh I didn't get any views on this one. I think people might not have even known what I was talking about. It came to me one night. Let's see. Uh, Sorry. Hey, Trump is down to 10.8 negative in the silver. That's the lowest he's been so far. So, Fun Monster, your question is all the more live right now. One thing I did think of saying is to these people who tell me to shut up because I'm so stupid, um, that they'll be shutting up. It's a terrible time to be a Trump supporter and mouthy about it. I could draw a parallel. I think it's going to be a hard time for some of my liberal friends um, who are hoping that they can motivate people with hope in the future. I think that there are times when it gets harder and harder for your assumptions to hold water, and what people might be tempted to do at that point is to keep them to themselves. I am not finding this. Oh my gosh. I have no idea what I did here. Anyway, no, that we all have folly, like you being a putz and me being a putz, um, is a place of great intimacy. That's what I'm after. Is that sense, every one of us is a human, and we're all dealing with these anxieties, and we're all slipping into things that can feel like they've duped us. I dealt with several people, some of them clients this week, who saying, I'm trying to figure out, why did I fall for this? And my argument is, it's a rare life that doesn't fall for something they regret, fall head over heels for something they regret. I know a few, but these were safe people. They happened to live in comfortably, luckily sane worlds, and were supplied with lucky partners. Yeah, so I have an 84-year-old friend who's like that. I don't think she's ever fallen for anything. She does at 84. She sends me things that she's from spammers and from the online stuff. And she says, "Should I respond to this?" No, you don't have to respond to that. You don't have to respond. So that may make my point, which is, who gets through a life without being a putz by your definition, fun monster? I sure am not an exception to that. I mean, good Lord, I've wasted my whole life learning things I now already know. So let's see. What haven't I dealt with here? Azrael Crowley, your birth name is Israel. Complicated. Along with it's like I've kind of been on a break for the last 5 years. Planning to go look. Okay, yes, there we go. Yes, keep this in mind. From my perspective, they are not a truth teller. They are an altered state. I adore altered states. Not everybody does, but I really like them. I get stoned most nights, sativa most nights. And I do coffee, and I'm still dealing with. I have this love-hate relationship with nicotine pouches. Why? They're an altered state. They're not particularly bad for my health, but I don't like the expense, and I don't like the dependency, and I'm not even sure how dependent I am, because I can get them off of for a month or two, but then I get back on them. They're kind of like a doggy treat for me, and they're mild altered state. So I love them. But no, I am not looking for truth from them, and I think that's a bullshit way to go at them. It's very much in line with revelation, and revelation is a problem with humans, is that we can feel like we've seen the light in the beginning of the end, or at the end of the beginning. At the end was the beginning of the word, and words enable us to do this kind of having breakthroughs that I don't think there are the same as other animals can deal with. Yes, curiosity killed the cat, and the truth does not always set you free. It's incredibly disappointing, and I think that's the problem with breakthroughs. Breakthroughs always feel like they're just nothing but wins. You don't notice what you're giving up, and often what you're giving up is reality. That is, and if there's one rule you get from all of evolutionary history, is adapt to reality or die. It'll fuck you up, and so I like that about it. Is there a theme to the art and mask on your back wall? There's a little bit of a theme. Let me see if I can get the focus on them. Those are two-face masks from Mexico. They're not particularly high tech, but that's the ambivalence I am promoting. My first book was called Negotiate with Yourself and Win. I am of two minds about things. I want to keep that in mind. My equanimity comes from being equally worried that I'm too much or not enough of some trait for the situation. And that is a pre-human goal. That is a homo ergaster. That's a homo ergaster, I think, is. I've got two of those. Terry gave them to me as birthday gifts. One of the two I've got, I don't know which one is up there on the shelf right now, is is the one I was talking about earlier. That's 2 million years of stability, of sustainability based on one tool, stone tool. And then the hollowed out statue guy back there is I am what I prevent myself from doing. In that sense, I'm not something added to physics. I'm a reduction in physical possibilities that keeps itself reducing them. I am a constraint that channels energy into work that regenerates the constraint that I am. That's how I think about it based on this origins of life research I do. And there is something, if you look at the cover of Terry's book, Incomplete Nature, that has got that whole aspect of it. And when I first met Terry, one of the first things he quoted me, I was quoting the Tao, and we had some affinity about it. Not because we're spiritual, religious, that kind of thing, but he was really interested in the hole at the wheel's hub. If you look up that chapter of the Tao, that absence, so he talks about it as absentialness. And so you get that, for example, with symbols. And there are other aspects of it as well. But a word is not what it represents. It's the absence of what it represents that makes you seek what it represents. An appetite is the absence of something. So we're trying to understand how that works in strictly physical terms. So that's probably where that one comes from. And then my dear friend and co-thinker, a buddy who shows up here, sent me that a-hole clown guy. And then beyond that, you've got a picture that's hard to see, but no, you can see it there. I'm not sure where she is, but she's grooming a monkey while the monkey is grooming her. And then the bookshelf right there is made of books, paradoxes, counter paradoxes, this baffling world, everything's a puzzle, the stand underneath it. There's a local artist here who was making bookshelves like that, and each one of them had a theme, and I happened to see this one, and I just thought it's perfect for me. Okay, have you ever dated a solipsist? That's almost all I have fights with. Trumpists are solipsists. I mean, what we're talking about is people who have completely insulated themselves and what they say goes. So yes, in that sense, but I wouldn't call it a debate. I noticed this yesterday. It showed up in the video I produced yesterday, which is debating and argument are one thing. I'm not talking about debate and argument. In this series, how to not suck at fighting, I'm talking about fighting. How do you deal with someone who has gone solipsistic? And in a way, that's what I'm talking about here. That's the whole theme we've been talking about, is the satisfaction of a breakthrough that makes you feel like you don't need to listen anymore. You've had the last epiphany you'll ever need. That's the feeling. Very tempting. It's so much fun to get there. Can you imagine the satisfaction of being a solipsist? It'd be so cool. Yes, not good for you in the long run, or at least not good for the rest of us, but boy, is it fun. I'm sure they're having a grand old time until they aren't. It's like a drug. Okay, let's see. One last thing here, because we're a little over time. And you guys have to pay me time and a half if we go any more than 3 minutes over, and we're already at 33. So, you have to pay me 150% of zero if you want me to keep talking here. Azrael, perhaps prior to your doom scrolling age, all these Trumpers started getting smartphones, flip phones, and we're scared into supporting Trump from the rising liberalism they saw. Yeah, there's something there. Okay, interesting. Okay, all right. Goodbye, sweethearts. This was fun. I hope it was fun for you. It was good for me. Was it good for you? And I'll be back next week. And I will see you guys. And feel free to write to me, and also email me if you want to join the study group. Email me if you need any one-on-one consulting kind of stuff. And then the other thing is, if you are not OD'd on me already and can stand to have me in your feed, I'm all over social media these days. I still tend to gravitate towards my Jeremy Sherman account on Facebook. That's where I jot notes all the time ad nauseum. But but also everywhere. I am everywhere. I am omnipresent. And I'm not saying I'm omnipleasant. See you, sweethearts.